Achieving financial success takes dedication, discipline, and most importantly, a plan. For over 30 years, Don Reynolds has helped savers define their needs, formulate their plans, and achieve their goals. From accumulation to preservation and protection, and through the income distribution phase in retirement, implementing the right strategies makes all the difference. Your retirement is our business. Welcome to Strategic Asset Preservation.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Reynolds Rant. Of course, I'm Don Reynolds and my good
Corey Still.
partner, Corey. So today we're going to start a new topic or sub-series. There'll probably be 3, maybe 4. We're not sure how much we'll get through in each one, but it's really what we do, and it's to help you retire ready. That's really the name of this series. It's called Retire Ready.
Yeah.
And there's a lot involved with making sure you're ready to retire, as a lot of people are learning as you get closer. So we'll jump right in. Initially, we're going to talk about the 3 financial phases of life, because there really are 3, what I would say very different phases.
Yeah.
Your first phase is really your accumulation phase, and that's, you start roughly 25, you get through college, you get your degree, whatever, get your career going, and 25 to 55, that's really your accumulation. That's when you're building your engine, so to speak, that's going to spit out the money in retirement. You're going to have child education during all that years. Obviously, raising children it's a great thing. Buying a home, probably.
Yeah.
You're going to have probably the biggest major purchase you'll ever do in your life, buying a home. And so, during those years, if you're doing it right, we talk about dollar cost averaging. You want to make sure that you are doing that. We've talked about 401ks, free money. Make sure you're getting the match, or at least taking what the match is. Don't leave that on the table. But you can also hold more risk in those years.
Correct.
Because you've got so many years before you're ever going to tap into the money. So, your risk tolerance is much greater in those years. Of course, you've heard us talk about, as you get closer to retirement, you got to start, reevaluating, readjusting those things.
Yeah, that timeline shortens up there.
Yep, for sure. So that's really the first phase of retirement.
Yeah.
And then the second phase, let Corey talk about it.
Yeah, that's your preservation phase. And I'm going to say a quick interjection here real quick in case you're listening and you got to go real fast. Give us a call if you want us to send this to you. It's a quite extensive booklet that we can get you a copy of, this Retire Ready. So give us a quick call, 651-773-3859. Again, 651-773-3859 in case you got to run and don't get to listen to the rest of this here. Just give us a call. We'd like to get this in your hand. It's quite extensive. And again, you can read through everything as we hit topics here on the podcast. But yeah, then your preservation phase is really that 55 to 65, that 10-year window, as we call it. Where you really want to make sure that now we need to have maybe a mindset change, because our timeline is shrinking down as to when we need these monies or these dollars to potentially be our income in our retirement. We've built the retirement savings. We've built the engine, as we call it. Now we need to maybe look at, let's make sure this engine is fine-tuned and change our philosophies before we turn it on, where it needs to start giving us that RPMs, that horsepower, that dollar to help us in retirement. And in that preservation phase, that's what we really call that changing of the mind, as I hit a little bit earlier. It can be tough for all of us because we really get accustomed as human beings and we get conditioned. And if we don't look at changing our investment philosophy, maybe now taking on less risk, preparing our assets for income in retirement rather than preparing them for growth. Now, we still want to grow it and accumulate in this phase, but we want to really start to focus on what is it that we might need in our future for income, and how are these assets going to play into that income. We're going to talk in a future podcast here about the sources of income in retirement. Well, these assets may be a source that we need. That's why we save these dollars, perhaps. And again, that preservation is very important. I'll just draw us quickly back to 2008. Seems like a long time ago for a lot of people, but I know there's a lot of people in 2008 that were in this preservation period, that 55 to 65, toying with looking at retirement, and maybe didn't make that change in their philosophy for investing, maybe didn't get into more preservation of their dollars, kept things the same as they were in the accumulation phase, our young 20s, 30s, and 40s, and lost over half, if not more, of those dollars saved for retirement, and had to hence work much longer than they maybe wanted to. So again, just look at history here, folks. This is a very important phase as we're preparing for the last phase, which is the distribution phase.
Correct. And, again, it's about reevaluating, realigning, like Corey said, how you're focused on the investments that you have and how much risk you're taking during that preservation. And then, of course, distribution. Now we're in our golden years.
Yeah.
We hope anyway, right? Realistically, you could actually start, and some people, we have clients who do retire earlier and, they start tapping in assets at 59 and a half, and you can, of course, if it's qualified dollars. But the real goal here is you've got to make sure you've got a budget. You've heard us talk about this before. How much money are you going to need in that distribution phase? And then where are the dollars coming from? Social Security? Do you have a pension? You don't see a lot of those anymore. So that's why you really got to be saving on your own and your 401ks and whatnot, Roths. And this is when you really want to be getting what we say a lot more conservative with your risk pool, especially if it's dollars you're going to live on.
Correct.
If it's money that you don't need to use to live on, well, then you can stay a little more risky with that because you don't have to touch it. You bought the time back. You've all heard us talk about this one. So we think that's very important that you look into all this. And just to reiterate what Corey said, we'd love to get this in your hands. We can email this out as well for people. So give us that call. So
the distribution phase, I just add something here real quick. The key is now you've got to deal with certain risks that I know we'll talk about in future podcasts. And that greatest fear that perhaps our listeners have, as well as most people when we do a workshop or a seminar, greatest fear in the room when you're looking at retirement is running out of money. Greatest fear. So that distribution phase becomes critical to make sure, again, you've realigned your risk tolerance. You've looked at the dollars you may need to have distributed to you for that income. And again, if there are dollars that you don't, then maybe those dollars you have more risk with. But again, it's making sure you're working with someone that's going to align with your goals, align with what you want in retirement, your income. And again, make sure that is looked at and critically evaluate how things are invested. I always go back to Will Rogers, and I think you said this early on, that there's a quote in one of his books where he said, at some point, I'm more concerned about the return of my money than the return on my money. So very important.
Sure.
Yeah.
A lot of people know who he was.
Yeah.
So, moving on to planning, there's really three main areas, in our opinion, that you've got to really focus in on. Number one is healthcare planning. We've talked about long-term care, the elephant in the room, no one likes to talk about, but you really need to look at some kind of a plan there. What's it going to be? Don't just ignore it because it's not just going to go away. We're all living longer. It means we're going to need more care. Obviously kind of comes to what Corey just said about, running out of money, income planning. Make sure you have some sources besides Social Security. You're probably going to want some other sources of guaranteed income, like pensions. We call it pensionizing your IRA or some of it to give you guaranteed income. And then, of course, if you've done very well, planned well, saved well, you've got a lot of assets, legacy planning. Everybody's heard the horror stories about that. Make sure you're never going to be one of them is the best advice I can give you.
Absolutely.
You don't ever want that nightmare. So, and that's something, we can help you with so you understand what those ramifications are when that untimely day comes and we go home to the Lord. We want to make sure we've got, and no pun, but our ducks in a row.
Exactly.
So, again, those are what we think are three very or what I would say most important things to really focus in on when you're looking at going into that retirement distribution phase.
Yeah. Well, I think that might be close to enough for this podcast. We want to keep them, right, where you got that attention span, and we'll get into, I think, what next would be the three most common sources of income. And so be sure to look for the subsequent podcast here where we continue to go through Retire Ready. And again, give us that call if you want to look at getting this in your hands. We can email it to you, send it to you. By all means, stop in. We can go through these with you in your personal situation. But it all starts with that phone call, folks. 651-773-3859. Again, 651-773-3859. Or use technology to schedule an appointment with us is another way. But again, we'd love to sit down with you and or get this in your hands because, again, very important topic for most of our listeners here.
Indeed. With that, thanks, folks. We appreciate it. And have a great day. We'll see you next time.
Listen to more with Don Reynolds and Corey Stilp on the Strategic Asset Preservation Podcast by visiting 800preserve.com.
The information presented on this program is provided for informational purposes only, without warranty of accuracy, completeness, or suitability for a particular purpose. This program is not intended to be and does not constitute financial, investment, legal, or tax advice. This information is general in nature, not specific enough to be construed as advice. You should not make any decision based on the information presented on this program without independent consultation with an appropriately licensed professional or competent advisor. Investment in securities or the market involves a potential risk for loss of principal. Trading, therefore, may not be suitable for all listeners. Annuity guarantees are based solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing company. Withdrawals of growth from annuities may be taxable as ordinary income in the year it is taken. Individuals should review contracts for specific details of the product's features and costs. Early withdrawals may subject the owner to penalties, fees, or taxes.
Fiduciary duty extends solely to investment advisory advice and does not extend to other activities such as insurance or broker-dealer services. Advisory clients are charged a quarterly fee for assets under management, while insurance products pay a commission, which may result in a conflict of interest regarding compensation.
Advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, a registered investment advisor.